Hello everyone, just Goran here and welcome back to another Planet Zoo real life inspiration video. And boy am I glad that there was another flamingo in the America's Animal Pack, because otherwise the Greater Flamingo video would have been so incredibly big. But now I can split up the African flamingos and the American flamingos in separate videos. So today we are looking at the American flamingo as well as all the other flamingos from the Americas. So let's start with Vogelpark Avifauna, the bird park in the Netherlands, and we are in a Cuban area. We've got a beautiful building there, the Havana building, and from this little seating area where you can have a little snack, you are actually looking into the flamingo aviary over here. And here's the entrance, and one pretty interesting thing is everything here is about Cuba, because this is the Cuban flamingo. Yes, the American flamingo is also called the Cuban flamingo, and while in English the kind of default name is American flamingo, in Dutch it's usually called Cuban flamingo, which also makes the Cuban theming around here a lot more logical. But it's really cool, and the aviary here is super nice. It's so lush. We can see some scarlet ibis up in the tree as well. There's also spoonbill and Inca terns. The Inca terns actually have a bit of their separate space, which was through that glass viewing that we saw from the seating area. That's actually where the Inca terns usually hang out. But you can also see we are walking through a bit of a tunnel. I'm pretty sure this used to be a lot more open, but due to the bird flu, it was all closed off and they created this netted over tunnel through the aviary instead. But yeah, that was it for Avifauna. Next up we have Tierpark Berlin, and we actually start off over here with an indoor area view. You don't see that super often, so it's pretty good for inspiration right here. But yeah, it's basically just a big concrete pool with a bit of a dry area and then a pool area as well. And next to the indoor area you can also already get a peek of the enclosure, but not that great of a view. That comes as you're walking over here. You can see we've got the flamingos in front. I think it's camels in the back, not exactly sure what the idea was there, but it does look pretty nice. All of the reeds kind of hide some of the barriers, although there's a little bit of a fence in the background. But yeah, you can walk all the way around it. And here you can see they've got this moat around this little ring of an island with another pool inside of that, and then the nests in the middle of that. So pretty interesting. Next up we have the Zoo of Cologne, and when I visited the zoo last, all of the flamingos were cooped up because of the river. They actually have this huge enclosure with all sorts of waterfowl, but yeah, all the flamingos were standing right here in their own little area to protect them from the bird flu, right next to their backstage, which from what I could tell was also this concrete just concrete bath basically. And then next up we have the Zoo of Duisburg, where we have this really nice big lake. We can see a little bit of pink in the background in that little building right there. I'm guessing that that's their backstage. But yeah, they would also be able to go out here into this water. But yeah, that's all the footage I got. Here at Tierpark Hagenbeck, I quickly want to show these greater flamingos in this kind of Chinese garden area, which is interesting because over here we have the American flamingos. And the reason I showed the greater flamingos is because why aren't they here? This is the big panorama view of Tierpark Hagenbeck, like the famous Hagenbeck effect thing, right? We've got the flamingo, then we got a savanna habitat with like zebra, and then we got lions, and then we got, I forget what's at the top, but we got two African species in here. Why are there American flamingos in front and not the greater flamingos? It's really kind of, it's called the Africa panorama. Why aren't there greater flamingos in this habitat? A really weird choice, but it's a cool effect. It's a decent habitat, but yeah, strange. Next up we have the Zoo of Hannover, and we got this beautiful waterfall over there. Really cool feature that flows under the visitor path into the kind of pool around the flamingo habitat over here. This is a habitat that is just a complete mix of all sorts of flamingos that you can imagine. I think they got greater flamingo, Chilean, and American, if I'm not mistaken. They're all here in the Africa part of the zoo. I think they have mostly greater flamingo, but so that might make sense. I don't know. It's weird. Many zoos do this. They just throw all the flamingo together. Maybe it's done to make them feel safer and get them to breed, because flamingos will not breed if they are only in small numbers and they don't feel safe. But the more flamingo you have, the more safe they will feel and the more likely they are to breed. So that might have something to do with it, but still, I think it's a bit strange. But yeah, that's it for Hannover. Let's move to the next zoo, which is Dierenpark Hoenderdaell. And here we got a large aviary with a big faux tree in the middle, but also an indoor viewing. And again, yeah, we got some concrete pools and then a bit of a dry area. Once again, also a big gate to go into the aviary. But yeah, this is the aviary. It's got some nice plants around it. It's got all these faux trees and all kinds of perches. It almost looks like a climbing frame for monkeys, but as far as I know, there's no monkeys in here. Just birds being able to fly around and perch on those things like ibis. There's some peafowl in here for some reason, but yeah, here you can see all the flamingos. Lovely waterfall right there. It's a pretty nice enclosure. You can walk pretty much all the way around it and get many views. So over here you can see the larger pool, and the flamingos standing inside at the moment. But yeah, as we continue to walk around, we can see there's another window right there. I guess I will just show that real quick. It's not for the flamingos, this is for the other birds, but that's what a bird backstage might look like. Pretty interesting. Then next up we have the Zoo of Krefeld, where the flamingos are situated in a nice big lake and next to a food area, and here you can see kind of their habitat a bit zoomed in. I don't have great footage of this one. I feel like I may have not hit record at some point because it goes from that building to this, where I just completely didn't film anything in between. But yeah, nice big lake, big area for the flamingos to be standing on, and really cool habitat right there. And then next up we have the Zoo of Osnabrück, where the flamingos are right across the entrance. It's often said that flamingos make a great entrance animal because they make a lot of noise, so here's an example of zoos actually doing that. This is both the Chilean and the American Flamingo, as you could see on the sign there for a second. And yeah, this is a pretty interesting barrier type. I'm not sure what the idea is exactly. Maybe it looks very temporary. Maybe it's also a birth control measure to like prevent other birds from flying in. But yeah, over here we have Ouwehands Dierenpark. I was actually there yesterday, and I recorded this brand new footage because the footage I had was pretty old, but I forgot to bring my GoPro, so I had to record it with my phone. But still, it gives a nice overview of the enclosure. So we saw some indoor buildings. That's what we walked past at the start, and then we've got a pretty long enclosure. It's not very wide, but it's quite long, and there's several smaller pools all throughout it. There we could see the entrance for the keepers, and over here is a part where you can actually get pretty close to them. And I feel like I have to talk louder because these flamingos do make a lot of noise. But yeah, you can get really close to them. They tend to move around quite a bit, and you get pretty cool views. And I like that little shade structure kind of attached to the pool. On this side you can get a view of the pelican enclosure, but in the back you can see the flamingo enclosure kind of curves around the backstage of the pelicans, so you can even see them from there. It's pretty fun right there. And next up we have Pairi Daiza, and we are entering this huge aviary. This is, well, it says it right there. It's the giant aviary. It says this is the giant aviary of Pairi Daiza. And as you're walking through it, you can definitely see why it's called that. It's absolutely huge, really allowing the birds to just fly all over the place. And yeah, for the entire length of the aviary, you can see this big pond to the left of us. The path goes along that. And you can see all the waterfowl that is around here. And yeah, you can see we've got all sorts of stuff. We've got guinea fowl, all types of duck, ibis, surima, crane, and of course the flamingo, which we can, I think, maybe see dotted around here. Yeah, there is some flamingo in between the ibis around that little riverbank right there. So yeah, really awesome aviary. Let's just have one more look at it in its entirety right there before we make our way to the exit and go to the next zoo, which is going to be Pantropica, formerly the Orchidee. Mostly an indoor zoo. There is actually one part of it that is outdoors, and that is where we are now. And it's not completely outdoors. It is still netted over to prevent the birds from flying out, but you actually get some fresh air in here. That's what I mean mostly. You can see we have a scarlet ibis, we have all sorts of duck, we also saw a golden pheasant, and over here we have our American Flamingo, and you can get really close to them. I think you can maybe even feed them, although I'm not exactly sure. I think you can get some feed around here, but I'm not sure if it is for the flamingo or if the flamingo would actually be taking it from you. The flamingo, by the way, don't have to be on the visitor side. If they want, they can be on that little shore on the other side of the water. So that's it. Pretty nice enclosure. Let's go to Planckendael, where we are entering the kind of South American aviary right here. What's pretty cool about this one is that on the left we have kind of the flamingo area, and on the right we have the Humboldt penguin area. There is also tons of other birds near, like the Inca tern that we can see right over here. The flamingos tend to stick to the back over there. I've actually never really seen them in this pool. Much like in other zoos that we saw, we actually have multiple species of flamingo in here. Although it's not necessarily that the zoo designed it that way, the flamingos that were in the Zoo of Antwerp were actually moved to Planckendael temporarily because Planckendael has much better housing for them, especially in terms of the bird flu. And when they moved the flamingo from Antwerp here, they actually got a lot of offspring because suddenly they had enough flamingo for the flamingo to feel safe enough to start breeding and get all this offspring. So that's really fun right there. Next up we have the Zoo of Rostock, where we've got this pretty open, very lush enclosure, nice big pond in the middle, but so much lushness around. The flamingo were actually not standing in their pond, they were standing over here, where you can get a really nice close view of them, so that's really cool. My favorite feature of this enclosure was this right here. Me and Pacha, by the way, Pacha, shout out, we're absolutely having a blast building a dam. Of course, I'm a Dutch person, I need to build a dam when I see water. I'm like a beaver in that sense. But yeah, that's right beside the flamingo enclosure, that's why I included it, because I love it so much. But here you can see more of the enclosure, and you might have also seen there's a bridge going through the enclosure. There is actually another gate that you can enter, and that will bring you inside the flamingo enclosure right here. So it's also a walkthrough. We can see the backstage holding right there, and then we are going onto this little boardwalk, and that brings us through this lovely, lovely, lush piece of nature. And we can also cross that little rope bridge that you may or may not have spotted in the distance in the other footage, but it goes right across the pond. I also saw some turtles swimming in the water here, so that's pretty fun. But yeah, as you get across the bridge, you can go through this gate and leave the enclosure once again. And that's it for the Zoo of Rostock. Next up we have the Zoo of Schwerin, where we have this really nice big pond. We can see some pelicans in the background, but in front here I think might be part of the flamingo enclosure. I'm not exactly sure where the boundaries stop, but here is their indoor holding, a nice modern building with a big concrete pool once again. And then as we continue walking along, we can see the flamingo already in the background here, standing in this part. So yeah, it's a really, really big enclosure, but of course the flamingo like to have safety in numbers. They like to stick together, so you won't really see them spread out that much, but it does give them a nice large natural area to move around in if they want to. And yeah, it looks really, really cool like that, so that's awesome right there. But that's it for Schwerin. Next up we have Tier- und Freizeitpark Thüle. And yeah, it's a very simple enclosure. Again, a mix between the Chilean and American Flamingo, I'm pretty sure. They do also have Greater Flamingo, but they are in a separate enclosure. So we'll see that once we do a Greater Flamingo video. But yeah, pretty simple, just a rectangular enclosure, a nice pool in the middle. But that's it for Thüle. So let's move to Vogelpark Niendorf. This bird park has the flamingo right at the entrance right here. Well, not right at the entrance, but very close proximity to the entrance. And yeah, it's a nice natural pond over here. That's what this zoo does really, really well for most of their like cranes and things. We also saw it in the Japanese crowned crane video. And they just have these huge ponds that they've sectioned off for all sorts of bird species. And here in the middle, you can see what I guess would be their indoor area. Pretty cramped, but I guess that works. Anyway, as you make your way all the way around the zoo, eventually you'll come back here and see the enclosure from the other side as well. So here you can see what that looks like. But that's going to be it for Vogelpark Niendorf. And we are going to move to Welvogelpark Walsrode, where we have a little flamingo section of the zoo right here with all sorts of species. I'm just going to show all of them because I'm not confident in saying this is this one and this is this one. So there we got one enclosure. As you move further around, you get more views into that one. And they got a really nice big body of water. There's also backstage holding. You can also feed them. You can put the food over here into this tube and it will just go out into the water. I feel like these two ducks over here know that that is a possibility because they do seem to be really hanging around that area, being like, maybe someone will give us some food. But yeah, as you move further around, you've got more of the enclosures right here. And that's it for Walsrode. And that's it for all the American Flamingo. Now we're gonna move to some Chilean and other flamingos. So over here at the Zoo of Antwerp, this is what the enclosure looked like. Lovely pool next to this really nice mowed lawn, but no flamingo in there because they were being held in their backstage due to the bird flu. And as I said, eventually they moved them to Planckendael. I'm not sure if they're back yet or if they made other changes. It's been a while since I've been to Antwerp, but by peeking through the bushes here, I could see them in their backstage right there. Then next up we have the Zoo of Berlin, and here we got not just the Chilean flamingo, but we're actually starting off with the James or the Puna flamingo and the Andean flamingo. Now according to Zoo Tier List, it is actually the only zoo in the world to have the James flamingo and one of the two zoos that has the Andean flamingo, so super rare right there. We also have Chilean flamingo over here. here next to the separation part. But yeah, really rare species, although the enclosure isn't all that special if you ask me, but still cool to have seen those species, I guess. Next up we have the Zoo of Dortmund, where we have once again the flamingos as kind of an entrance animal. It takes a while to get to them, but they are pretty much the first animal you see. As you walk into the zoo, you got this beautiful fountain right here, which due to the sun being the way it was when I visited, it looked extra special. But as you walk further along that lake, you eventually get to the flamingos right here. I'm not sure if they would ever be hanging out closer to the entrance. It looks like this is kind of their area because they have their feeders and their backstage around here. But yeah, really quite a cool enclosure, especially with that fountain. That's just a statement right there as you enter the zoo. Really awesome right there. But yeah, that's it for the Zoo of Dortmund. Next up, we are going to BergZoo Halle, where we have the Chilean flamingo in a really lovely enclosure. I love this little viewing area with how overgrown it is and stuff. And then the enclosure itself is also just surrounded by plants, making it look really lush. All the reeds around the water part, it just looks really nice and cozy. Yeah, I really love this enclosure. You've got a couple different viewing areas into it. I really like this one where it's just kind of a corridor with many different layers. Yeah, really awesome right there. And then next up we have the Zoo of Leipzig, where we are entering Flamingo Lagoon through this little hut over here with a bunch of education and theming. We already get a peek into the enclosure. You can see we've got these super tall kind of faux tree logs holding up the netting, and then there's a lovely large pool, a nice faux rock wall in the back, some buildings peeking out over it. I actually recently watched a video by ZSH Plays, who built a flamingo habitat in Planet Zoo based on this enclosure right here, and he did a pretty good job at capturing the vibes of it. As we're walking along, we can see one more of those faux tree logs to the left of the boardwalk, so the aviary does kind of go that way as well, the water going under the path. And yeah, you got all these lush little patches of foliage around, and we're exiting through this little cave, and we come to the end of the zoo. There's actually kind of the exit. The flamingos are the exit animal of this zoo, but what's really nice here is that they did kind of keep the South American theming for the exit, and the exit gift shop right here. So that's pretty fun that we do have some of that theming around, and that's really quite cute. Next up we have Zoo de Maubeuge, where we have a pretty simple enclosure. We got this little wooden building which looks pretty nice. I think that's our backstage. And then we have the education signs, and you can see we have both Chilean and Greater Flamingo. And yeah, we have a peek into the enclosure right here. Not a grand viewing area, it's kind of hidden, to be honest. I feel like this enclosure would be pretty easy to miss, if not for the noise that the flamingo probably make. But yeah, that's all there is to it right there. Then next up we have Monde Sauvage, where we are entering a walk-through aviary, and as we go inside we can see some flamingos almost right away, but those are actually not the Chilean flamingo. I think those are the Greater Flamingo, and this other aviary that you don't walk through on the right over here, that one houses the Chilean flamingo, so they at least did separate them. So we got the Greater Flamingo over here, which you can get really close to, and I think we got some, I think are those sacred ibis in the trees right there? Might be, I can't really tell. And here, flying in, it's the Chilean flamingo, housed together with some other South American birds, like I think those are southern screamers standing in the back there. So yeah, they did keep some geographical consistency there at least. But yeah, that's it for Monde Sauvage. Let's move on to the Allwetterzoo Münster, where we got a peek into a pretty nice enclosure. They got a large pool, although the background of the enclosure is just a bunch of fence and stuff. It's not too amazing looking in my opinion. But yeah, you can walk around the enclosure and view it from another angle as well. Here we got another viewing area, which looks a little bit nicer. At least the background is a bit more lush, if not for the construction that was still happening right there, which should be done by now. It's been a while since I've been there. Anyway, next up we have Pakawi Park. And for those who are waiting for me to shit on Pakawi Park, I'm gonna have to disappoint you a little bit, because this is probably my favorite enclosure in Pakawi. We've got a lovely walk-through area. We've got the Chilean flamingo, some scarlet ibis. Did I say scarlet? But yeah, we have a really nice, quite tall and large walk-through aviary, which allows all of the birds to free fly around. My speech is completely failing on me. We got some African birds in here as well, like the crowned crane, little egret, and later we'll also see a hammerkop, and then South American birds like the Puna ibis and the flamingo, of course. But yeah, this is actually a really large, like we're still not through it completely. There's more to be seen. There's another pond over here where we can see the hammerkop. Really awesome. But yeah, as you can see, it just keeps going. There's a waterfall over here. It's nice and lush. It's a really nice aviary, I have to say. This is my favorite enclosure in Pakawi, which doesn't say a lot because it's a really bad zoo, but this thing is nice. So anyway, next up, NaturZoo Rheine. We have a really, really large aviary here as well. We have a couple of these viewing areas where you can see a cobweb, but you can see into the flamingo aviary, although you couldn't really see the flamingo from there because they're kind of hiding in a bit of a dead spot. But not a dead spot from everywhere, just from these kind of 2 side viewing areas. But there is also a part where you can actually enter the aviary and view the flamingo without any netting in front of you. So that's quite nice. And here you can see just how big it is. It goes quite far. The flamingos were pretty far away, but if you have a good camera, you can actually get some nice shots of them from here. So that is really pretty awesome. We also have, once again, an indoor viewing over here. We got a little greenhouse with a nice concrete path and also a dry spot for them. So yeah, really quite nice enclosure. Then it's time for the last enclosure of the video. We are at the Grüne Zoo Wuppertal, where we have this beautiful modern looking aviary. This is the hyacinth macaw aviary. It's called Araland, where, yeah, just look at how this is constructed. It's so cool looking. Honestly, seeing this is making me want to build something like this in Tierpark, which I don't know if I have the space for, but I'll figure that out later. But yeah, we got some views into the hyacinth macaw backstage and kitchen. Of course, this area does mainly focus on the hyacinth macaw, which is a very endangered species, and they want to raise awareness for that. We got some natural trees standing in the aviary, peeking through the roof. And yeah, we might have found something that's louder than the flamingos, because the macaws are definitely a worthy contender. But yeah, down here in the area, you can see a little area for the flamingo. They've made some nests in there as well. And as you can see on the signs here, there are also poodoo in this aviary, usually hiding amongst the bushes at the bottom. But yeah, here one more viewing area where you can get a really close-up view of the flamingo, which is just a really nice addition to this aviary, making sure that something is also happening on the ground, even though the macaws will most likely stick to the the tree tops flying around and stuff like that. So yeah, and in the exit of the building is more hyacinth macaw education. So the flamingos are really just kind of an accessory here, I'm afraid. But something that they do show in here, which I think is pretty cool, is actually kind of this more technical-ish drawing of the building, showing you all the features of it, which I think is really quite awesome. And the outside of that building is also nicely themed to kind of a South American kind of theme. So yeah, really cool stuff right there. But that was the final habitat for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got some American flamingo inspiration. I sure did. I'm gonna have to think about how I will incorporate these into Tierpark, because there's many different ways to do so. So I'm curious to see what I come up with. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.